Ladies, let's be brutally honest. When a man suddenly ignores you, it doesn't just feel like silence, it feels like rejection that cuts deep into your confidence. One day, he's flooding your phone with sweet texts, tagging you in memes, asking what you ate, and making future plans, and the very next day, it's like he vanished into thin air. No explanation, no closure, just emptiness. And your mind starts running wild with questions. Did I say something wrong? Did he lose interest overnight? Is there someone else? This is where most women spiral into overthinking. But here's the bold truth. A man's silence is never without meaning. Dr. John Gray, the best-selling author of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, explains that men often withdraw when they feel pressured or emotionally overwhelmed. They go into their cave to process feelings. But here's the twist. Sometimes silence isn't about needing space, it's about power. Some men deliberately ignore as a way to test your patience and control the dynamic. If you don't identify which it is, genuine space or emotional manipulation, you risk chasing someone who's feeding off your confusion. And let me tell you, nothing destroys your feminine confidence faster than begging for breadcrumbs of attention. Picture this. You're lying in bed, staring at your phone like it holds the answers to your entire relationship. Every vibration makes your heart jump, only to realize it's just a random app notification, not him. Hours turn into a day, maybe two. Your stomach twists, your sleep is restless, and you keep rehearsing the last conversation in your mind, hunting for a mistake. That's not just silence, it's emotional chaos. Psychologists call this withdrawal behavior, where one partner intentionally creates distance to shift control. Think about it, the more you sit there waiting, the more you give him the upper hand. And here's the raw reality. Sometimes men ignore you, not because they're busy or confused, but because they want to see how far they can push your boundaries. Will you double text? Will you beg for answers? Will you compromise your standards? The bold truth is, ignoring can be a manipulation tactic. The more you chase, the more power you hand over. And ladies, chasing doesn't win hearts, it kills attraction. You need to remember, his silence doesn't define your worth. A man ignoring you might mean he's immature, scared, or testing you, but it never means you're less valuable. Your value is fixed, whether he recognizes it or not. Now let's get real about another truth. Sometimes his silence has nothing to do with you at all. Some men carry emotional wounds they've never healed, and instead of talking about it, they run. Research on attachment theory shows that avoidant men often pull away the closer they feel to a woman because closeness terrifies them. So when you see him active online, laughing with his friends but too busy to reply to you, that's not work stress, that's selective attention. He's choosing who deserves his energy, and if you're not in that circle, you're left waiting in the cold. Harsh? Yes. But here's the power move. Don't internalize it. His wounds are not your responsibility. You're not his therapist, you're his partner. If he can't face intimacy, he's not ready for the kind of love you deserve. Let's not sugarcoat this. Ignoring can be plain disrespect. A man who disappears for days, who can watch you hurting and still stay silent, is showing you exactly how little he values your feelings. Ladies, this is not about patience or understanding his mood. This is about self-respect. Relationship coach Matthew Hussey says, if he's not making you feel secure, he's making you feel anxious, and anxiety is not love. Think about that. You don't owe anyone endless tolerance while they toy with your emotions. If his silence brings you sleepless nights, panic attacks, or constant second-guessing, then his presence is toxic, not romantic. Don't normalize neglect as love. Silence is communication, and it's often saying, you are not a priority. Hear it loud, and act accordingly. Still, we need to be fair. Not every man ignores you out of cruelty. Sometimes men genuinely believe that pulling back creates attraction. They've read online forums or listened to bad advice that says, don't text her too much, make her chase you. So they vanish, thinking they're being mysterious, when in reality, they're just creating insecurity. Here's a real-life example. Sarah, 28, dated a guy who would vanish for days. At first, she thought he was busy, but then she saw him posting on social media. The pattern repeated. He'd vanish, then reappear with sweet words. Sarah realized he wasn't mysterious, he was inconsistent. Eventually she stopped entertaining his cycle, and months later, she met someone consistent who showed up daily without games. That's when she finally understood, love is clarity, not confusion. But here's the boldest truth of all. When a man ignores you, he's teaching you how to treat him. If you allow silence, ghosting or mixed signals without consequences, you're telling him it's acceptable, and guess what? He'll keep doing it. Men are not mind readers, they respond to boundaries. When you set a standard, if you disappear without communication, I step back, you shift the power dynamic. Suddenly he knows silence equals losing access to you. That's the kind of silent language men understand. Dr. Henry Cloud, author of Boundaries in Dating, emphasizes boundaries are not walls, they're gates. They keep out what's harmful and let in what's safe. So ask yourself, what are you letting in by tolerating his silence? Imagine this scenario, he ignores your message for 2 days, and when he finally replies, he says, "Sorry I was busy." But during those 2 days, you saw him online, posting stories, liking pictures, and even commenting on his friends' posts. That's not busyness, it's priority. We all make time for what matters. If he had time to scroll through Instagram, he had time to send a 10-second text, saying, "I'll talk later." Ladies, don't fall for excuses that insult your intelligence. The man who ignores you but engages with the world is showing you he has time, just not for you. And that truth, while painful, is liberating. Because once you stop buying excuses, you start demanding respect. Some men ignore because they want to test your emotional resilience. They want to know, will you panic, will you beg, or will you hold your ground? It's like a twisted experiment. The problem is, women often fail this test by overcompensating, sending multiple texts, writing long emotional paragraphs, or calling repeatedly. But here's the counter move. Do nothing. Yes, nothing. That silence, that stillness, is more powerful than any emotional speech. When he realizes his absence doesn't shake your world, he has no leverage. Think of it like poker. You never reveal your desperation, because the moment you do, you lose the game. So instead of chasing, let him wonder why you're so calm. That calmness is your secret weapon. Let's take another perspective. Sometimes ignoring is about guilt. Men who are talking to someone else, hiding secrets, or unsure about commitment, often withdraw because they don't want to confront the truth. Ignoring becomes a way to avoid accountability. A 2022 survey on dating behavior showed that 36% of men admitted to pulling away when they felt guilty about something they didn't want to confess. Think about that, over 1/3. So if his silence comes with vague excuses, defensive behavior, or sudden mood shifts, pay attention. That silence might not be space, it might be a cover-up. And ladies, your intuition is your best radar. If something feels off, it probably is. Another bold point, silence can sometimes be punishment. Yes, punishment. This is called the silent treatment, and it's one of the oldest manipulation tactics in relationships. Instead of resolving conflict, he withholds attention to make you suffer emotionally. Experts in emotional abuse recognize silent treatment as a form of control. It makes the victim anxious, guilty, and desperate for reconciliation. If you've ever found yourself apologizing just to end the silence, even when you did nothing wrong, you've experienced manipulation. And let's be clear, love doesn't punish. Real men communicate, manipulators punish. If his silence feels like a weapon, don't confuse it for distance. Recognize it as emotional abuse. But let's pause here, because sometimes silence is simply immaturity. Some men never learned how to communicate their feelings. Instead of saying, "I need space," or "I'm stressed," they vanish. Immaturity doesn't excuse the behavior, but it explains it. You can't build a mature relationship with someone who handles discomfort by disappearing. Dr. Gary Chapman, author of The 5 Love Languages, points out that communication is the heartbeat of love. Without it, relationships collapse under the weight of assumptions. If he can't express his needs, you'll spend your life decoding his silence. And trust me, no woman deserves to live in a guessing game. You deserve clarity, not puzzles. Here's the empowering shift. Instead of asking, why is he ignoring me? Ask, why am I tolerating it? That's the real question. Because every time you accept silence, you teach yourself to settle for less than you deserve. The key is not to analyze his behavior endlessly, but to reflect on your standards. Do you want a relationship where silence is normal, or one where communication flows freely? Do you want to guess, or do you want certainty? Ladies, remember, a man's silence says more about him than it does about you, but your response says everything about your self-worth. When you choose to step back, focus on your life, and refuse to chase, you're sending a message louder than any words. I know my value, with or without you. Let's break down another hidden reason. Men ignore ego. Some men thrive on control and dominance. When you show interest, when you text first, when you seem invested, they feel powerful. So what do? They withhold attention just to watch you crave it. It's like dangling a glass of water in front of someone thirsty. This isn't love, it's ego games. And here's the ugly truth. The more you chase, the bigger his ego gets. I once coached a woman named Jessica, who said her boyfriend would ignore her for days, then come back acting like nothing happened. When she confronted him, he smirked and said, "I like when you miss me." That wasn't romance, that was narcissism. And narcissists feed on your pain. Ladies, if ignoring feels like he's flexing his power, recognize it for what it is: emotional manipulation. Don't feed his ego by chasing. Now let's talk about priorities. Life is busy, we all know that. Work deadlines, family obligations, personal struggles, they're real. But let's get brutally honest. Nobody is too busy to send a quick message. If a man has time to scroll TikTok, binge watch Netflix, or hang out with friends, he has time to type, "Hey, I'll talk later." So when he ignores you, it's not busyness, it's choice. You are simply not at the top of his priority list. And that's not meant to hurt you, it's meant to wake you up. Because when a man truly cares, he finds time, period. Think about the guy who texts you good morning, even from a business trip, or the husband who calls his wife during lunch, just to check in. That's effort, that's priority. Anything less is just excuses wrapped in laziness. Here's another angle. Sometimes men ignore to reset the relationship dynamic. They think pulling back will make you value them more. It's like playing cat and mouse, but let me be clear, relationships aren't supposed to be games. Love is not a sport where one wins and the other loses. I had a client, Melissa, who told me her boyfriend would suddenly stop talking whenever she got too busy with her own career. He'd vanish for days, and when she finally reached out, he'd reply, "Oh, I thought you needed space." But when she looked deeper, it wasn't about her needing space, it was about his insecurity. He couldn't handle that she had a life outside of him. So he used silence to pull her back. Ladies, remember, love celebrates your independence. It doesn't punish you for it. Sometimes silence is the loudest truth. He's just not that interested. Ouch. I know, but hear me out. If a man constantly ignores, delays replies, cancels plans, or never initiates, his silence is telling you the story his words never will. You don't need to wait for a dramatic breakup speech. His actions already gave you the answer. And I know the temptation. Maybe if I try harder, maybe if I prove myself, he'll change. But let's be bold. Love isn't earned by begging. When a man is truly into you, you'll never have to question it. He'll show up consistently, excitedly, and without hesitation. Stop translating silence into mystery. It's not mystery, it's lack of interest, and the faster you face it, the sooner you free yourself for someone who can give you full presence. Let's get into the psychology of ignoring. Men often underestimate how deeply silence affects women. Studies in emotional psychology show that rejection activates the same part of the brain as physical pain. That's why being ignored hurts like a stab. It's not in your head, it's literally in your nervous system. I remember a woman saying, "His silence felt like he erased me." And that's exactly it. When someone ignores you, your brain reads it as abandonment. But here's the shift. You can't control his silence, but you can control your response. Will you let his absence destroy your peace, or will you reframe it as clarity? Because every silence is a message, and sometimes that message is, he's not your person. Some men ignore, because they fear confrontation. Maybe there's a conflict, maybe they don't want to admit they're wrong, so instead of apologizing, they vanish. It's emotional cowardice. Mature men face conflict, immature men run from it. And here's what you need to understand. Conflict isn't a bad thing in relationships. In fact, psychologists agree that healthy conflict builds intimacy. But when a man refuses to face issues and chooses silence, he's choosing comfort over growth. Do you want a partner who runs from discomfort, or one who builds solutions with you? Remember, silence in conflict is not peace, it's avoidance. And avoidance kills trust faster than words ever could. Another perspective, some men use silence as revenge. They feel you wronged them, maybe you called them out, maybe you stood your ground, so they punish you with absence. This is the emotional equivalent of slamming a door in your face. Ladies, never let anyone weaponize distance against you. Real love seeks resolution, not revenge. If he can't express hurt without shutting you out, he's not practicing love, he's practicing control. And love without communication is like a car without fuel. It looks fine on the outside, but goes nowhere. You deserve a man who talks through pain, not one who vanishes until you apologize. Sometimes ignoring is cultural conditioning. Men are taught from a young age to be strong, don't show weakness, and don't be emotional. So when emotions get heavy, they withdraw. It's not always manipulation, it's conditioning. But here's the problem. Conditioning isn't your responsibility to fix. You are not his mother, his healer, or his emotional rehab center. You are his partner. If he refuses to unlearn toxic conditioning, then you'll forever carry the emotional labor. And emotional labor is exhausting. Ladies, you're not meant to drag a grown man into maturity. He needs to want it for himself. Silence rooted in conditioning may explain his behavior, but it doesn't excuse it. And here's where it gets personal. Ignoring damages trust. Even if he comes back after days, smiling and acting normal, a part of you never forgets. The emptiness you felt, that memory lingers. And over time, silence chips away at trust, like water dripping on stone. You start anticipating his absence instead of his presence. And let me tell you, anticipation of pain destroys love faster than anything. A strong relationship is built on reliability. If you can't rely on his voice, on his presence, then what are you building? A house of cards that collapses with the first wind. Don't build on silence, build on consistency. So let's circle back to the key question. When a man ignores you, what should you do? The answer isn't easy, but it's powerful. You don't chase. You don't beg. You don't spiral into proving your worth. You step back. You breathe. You invest that energy into yourself, your career, your friendships, your passions. Because silence can be his choice, but your response is yours. The greatest revenge against being ignored is not anger, it's thriving without needing his validation. Picture this. He opens his phone after days of silence, expecting desperate texts, but instead, he sees you living, glowing, laughing with friends, achieving goals. That image burns deeper than any emotional plea. Let your silence speak louder than his. When a man starts ignoring you, it's easy to assume it's personal, but psychology suggests otherwise. Sometimes, silence is a defense mechanism, not a rejection. For example, Dr. John Gottman, a leading relationship expert, explains that men often shut down emotionally to avoid conflict, while women usually seek more connection during stress. Imagine this. You text him after an argument, and he doesn't reply. Your instinct tells you he doesn't care, but in reality, his brain is wired to retreat when overwhelmed. Instead of panicking, recognize that his silence may not equal indifference. It may be his way of processing. Understanding this helps you step out of self-doubt and into clarity. Don't rush to fill the silence with desperate messages. Instead, allow space for balance. A man ignoring you could be a temporary pause, not a final goodbye. Here's the bold truth. Not every man ignoring you is a saint quietly dealing with stress. Sometimes, he's simply losing interest. But here's the twist. Ignoring is rarely sudden. Before the silence, there are clues: less enthusiasm in conversations, shorter replies, fewer plans. Women often ignore these red flags, hoping things will go back to how they used to be. But reality check: if he's emotionally checked out, no amount of chasing will bring him back. As dating coach Matthew Hussey says, energy grows where it's valued. Stop watering dead plants. If his silence feels like neglect, take it as data, not drama. The moment you start valuing yourself more than his absence, you gain the power to decide whether this relationship deserves another chance, or if it's time to walk away. Let's break the myth that ignoring is always about you. Sometimes, men pull away because of internal struggles, career pressure, family drama, or even self-doubt. Picture this: a man working long hours, drowning in deadlines, and suddenly going quiet on texts. It's not about you, it's about him feeling inadequate or exhausted. In a study by the American Psychological Association, men reported higher stress in silence than women, preferring withdrawal over expression. This doesn't mean you should excuse poor communication forever, but it does mean you need context. Ask yourself, is his silence a pattern of disrespect or a temporary coping method? Differentiating between the two saves you from unnecessary heartbreak. You're not a mind reader, but you can be a smart observer. Here's where boundaries come in. If a man is ignoring you, you have two choices: chase him down or reclaim your energy. Which sounds more powerful? Exactly. Boundaries are not ultimatums. They are guidelines for respect. If you keep calling, texting, and begging for attention, you're teaching him that ignoring you works. But if you step back, focus on yourself, and radiate confidence, you send a louder message. My value doesn't shrink because you're silent. Men respect women who respect themselves. Remember, silence is not only his weapon, it can be yours too. Instead of reacting to his absence, let your non-reaction speak volumes. That's the difference between chasing and choosing. Now let's get real. Sometimes ignoring is emotional manipulation. Yes, some men use silence as a control tactic, a way to make you doubt yourself and fight harder for their attention. This toxic behavior is called stonewalling. Psychologists warn that stonewalling is one of the biggest predictors of relationship failure. Why? Because it shuts down communication and breeds resentment. If you feel like you're constantly being punished with silence, it's not love, it's control. And here's the kicker: the more you chase, the more power he gains. Don't play into it. The strongest move is recognizing the game and refusing to participate. Your worth isn't measured by how much effort you put into breaking someone's wall. It's measured by how quickly you walk away from it. But here's the empowering shift. What if you used his silence as fuel for your growth, instead of obsessing over why he's ignoring you? Redirect that energy into yourself. Go to the gym, dive into your passions, expand your career, and live boldly. Imagine this scenario. He finally texts you after days of silence, but instead of sitting by your phone waiting, you've been thriving. That shift changes the entire dynamic. You're no longer the one waiting, you're the one living. This doesn't just make you more attractive, it makes you unstoppable. Confidence isn't about having his attention, it's about not needing it. Ladies, let's not forget, sometimes ignoring isn't deep psychology, it's just plain immaturity. A grown man communicates, a boy hides. Ask yourself, are you dealing with a man or a boy? If he can't express emotions, discuss problems, or even reply with honesty, he's not ready for the kind of love you deserve. As relationship therapist, Esther Perel says, the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your relationships. Don't downgrade your standards just because someone can't meet them. Ignoring may feel confusing, but the answer is often simple. If he can't show up consistently, he's not your person, period. So here's the ultimate takeaway. Being ignored by a man doesn't define your worth. It defines his character. It's not about begging for answers. It's about choosing yourself. Every moment you spend waiting for a man's attention is a moment stolen from your growth. Stop making his silence the loudest thing in your life. Instead, let your self-respect, confidence, and boundaries do the talking. Whether his silence is stress, loss of interest, or toxic control, the solution is always the same. Own your power, because the right man will never make you question your value through silence. He will affirm it through presence. And that, ladies, is the relationship advice no one tells you, but every woman needs to hear.